What if I told you that the world's most powerful empires weren't built on gold or oil, but on the drinks in your kitchen right now? Coffee, tea, and sugar, simple everyday products, fueled global trade, made nations rich, and even started wars. This is the story of how your morning cup built financial empires. Coffee's journey begins in the misty highlands of Ethiopia, where legend tells of a goat herder named Kaldi. He noticed his goats dancing with energy after eating bright red berries from a wild bush. Curious, Kaldi tasted the berries himself, and soon, word of this energizing fruit spread through local villages. By the 15th century, coffee had traveled north to Yemen, where Sufi monks used it to stay awake during long nights of prayer. The port city of Mocha became the world's first coffee trading hub, and coffee houses, called kahvekhane, flourished in cities like Mecca, Cairo, and Istanbul. In these early coffee houses, people from all walks of life gathered to share news, debate ideas, and play chess. Coffee became a symbol of intellectual exchange and social connection, so much so that some rulers tried to ban it, fearing its power to inspire dissent. By the 17th century, coffee had reached Europe through Venetian and Dutch traders. The drink quickly captivated cities like London, Paris, and Vienna. Coffee houses sprang up everywhere, earning the nickname penny universities. For the price of a cup, anyone could join lively discussions about science, politics, and trade. In London, coffee houses became the birthplace of new ideas and institutions. Lloyd's of London began as a coffee house where merchants and ship owners met to discuss insurance. The London Stock Exchange traces its roots to Jonathan's Coffee House, where traders gathered to buy and sell shares. As coffee's popularity soared, European colonial powers raced to cultivate it abroad. Vast plantations were established in the Caribbean, Latin America, and Asia. These plantations relied on enslaved and indentured labor, forever altering local economies and landscapes. Ships loaded with coffee beans crossed oceans, fueling a booming global trade. By the 19th century, Brazil emerged as the world's largest coffee exporter, with coffee becoming the backbone of its economy and a key player in global markets. But coffee didn't just change economies, it fueled revolutions. In Paris, coffee houses buzzed with talk of liberty and equality before the French Revolution. In Boston, revolutionaries plotted over coffee, and in London, writers and thinkers debated the future of their nations. The lesson? Coffee was never just a drink. It was a spark for new ideas, a driver of global trade, and a force behind the rise of financial empires, shaping the world in ways we still feel today every time we take a sip. In ancient China, tea was more than a drink, it was a way of life. Legend tells of Emperor Shen Nong, who discovered tea when leaves drifted into his boiling water nearly 5,000 years ago. Over centuries, tea became woven into the fabric of Chinese society, celebrated in poetry, art, and philosophy. Tea ceremonies became a refined ritual, emphasizing harmony, respect, purity, and tranquility. Scholars and monks gathered to share tea, discuss philosophy, and meditate, believing that a perfect cup could bring clarity and peace. As dynasties rose and fell, tea traveled along the Silk Road, carried by camel caravans through deserts and mountains. It became a prized commodity, traded for horses, spices, and silver, connecting China to Central Asia, the Middle East, and eventually Europe. By the 17th century, tea had reached the courts of Europe. In Britain, it quickly became a fashionable luxury among the elite. The British East India Company seized the opportunity, monopolizing the tea trade and amassing vast fortunes by importing Chinese tea to London's docks. In Britain, tea became a national obsession. Afternoon tea, elegant porcelain, and grand ceremonies turned tea into a symbol of empire and social status. Tea houses flourished, and the ritual of tea drinking became a daily event for all classes. But the thirst for tea had global consequences. To pay for Chinese tea, Britain exported opium to China, leading to widespread addiction and the devastating Opium Wars. These conflicts forced China to open its ports, shifting the balance of power in Asia. Across the Atlantic, British taxes on tea sparked outrage in the American colonies. In 1773, colonists disguised as Native Americans boarded ships in Boston Harbor and dumped tea into the water, the Boston Tea Party, a bold act of protest that helped ignite the American Revolution. To break China's monopoly, Britain expanded tea plantations in India, especially Assam and Darjeeling. Indian laborers, often under harsh colonial rule, transformed the landscape to feed Britain's insatiable demand for tea. The global tea trade brought immense wealth to Britain, but also exploitation and upheaval in India and China. tea reshaped economies, fueled revolutions, and left a legacy that still shapes our world today. Every cup a reminder of a complex, interconnected history. In medieval Europe, sugar was a rare treasure, so precious it was locked away in apothecaries and served only at royal banquets. Chroniclers described it as white gold, a spice more valuable than pearls. Imagine a grand feast, nobles marveling at candied fruits and sweetmeats, luxuries reserved for the elite. By the 17th century, sugar's allure swept across Europe. Demand exploded. Plantations sprang up in the Caribbean and Brazil, their fields stretching to the horizon. Sugar was no longer just for kings. It became a household staple, sweetening tea, cakes, and daily life. But this sweetness was built on suffering. Millions of Africans were torn from their homes, forced onto slave ships bound for the Americas. Olaudah Equiano, a survivor, wrote, "The shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying rendered the whole a scene of horror almost inconceivable. On the plantations, enslaved people toiled from dawn to dusk, enduring brutal punishments and backbreaking labor. This was the triangular trade. European ships carried goods to Africa, exchanged them for enslaved people, who were then transported to the Americas. Sugar, rum, and other products returned to Europe, fueling fortunes and feeding the Industrial Revolution. Maps of the era show a web of ships crisscrossing the Atlantic, each voyage a link in a chain of exploitation. Sugar profits transformed European cities. Banks, mansions, and entire industries rose on the backs of enslaved laborers. In London, Paris, and Lisbon, the wealth of the colonies was visible in every grand building. Yet in the Caribbean and Brazil, the legacy was poverty, pain, and resistance. In colonies like Jamaica, Cuba, and Barbados, sugar plantations dominated the land. Generations lived and died in the shadow of the cane fields. Some resisted, rebellions flared, and stories of courage echo through history. The true cost was staggering. Millions suffered and died in the pursuit of white gold. The legacy of sugar is one of immense wealth and immense human tragedy. As one abolitionist wrote, "The blood of the slave is in every lump." The lesson is clear. Sugar built empires and transformed economies, but its sweet success came at a devastating human cost, a legacy we must never forget. Coffee, tea, and sugar did more than satisfy cravings. They became the lifeblood of a new global economy, weaving together continents, cultures, and fortunes in ways the world had never seen before. Ships laden with coffee, tea, and sugar crossed oceans, linking Europe, Africa, Asia, and the Americas. These trade routes formed the backbone of what became known as the triangular trade. In bustling ports, merchants exchanged goods, signed contracts, and counted coins. The constant flow of commodities and capital demanded new ways to manage risk and finance voyages. This need gave rise to powerful financial innovations. Banks in London, Amsterdam, and Lisbon began to offer loans, credit, and insurance, tools that made global trade possible on an unprecedented scale. Insurance companies emerged to protect merchants from the dangers of the sea, storms, pirates, and shipwrecks. Lloyd's of London, for example, began as a coffee house where traders pooled resources to share risk. On the trading floors, prices for coffee, tea, and sugar were set daily. Fortunes could be made or lost in a single deal. These markets laid the groundwork for the stock exchanges and financial centers we know today. Everyday life was transformed. In cities, coffee houses and tea rooms became centers of business, news, and social life. Merchants, bankers, and writers gathered to share information and strike deals. The profits from these commodities funded wars, built empires, and fueled the rise of capitalism. The desire for coffee, tea, and sugar-shaped laws, labor systems, and even the layout of cities. The legacy of this financial web is still with us today, visible in global markets, powerful financial institutions, and the everyday rituals that connect us to a centuries-old story of commerce and ambition. Today, coffee is a $100 billion global industry with over 2 billion cups consumed every day. From bustling cafes in New York to street vendors in Vietnam, coffee culture is everywhere. Giants like Starbucks and Nestlé have transformed how and where we drink coffee, introducing everything from pumpkin spice lattes to instant coffee sachets. In Ethiopia, small farmers still grow beans by hand, while in Italy, espresso bars remain a daily ritual. Tea remains central to daily life in Asia, the UK, and beyond. The global tea trade is valued at over $50 billion, with countries like China, India, and Kenya leading production. Brands like Lipton and Twinings are household names, But tea culture thrives in countless forms, from Japanese matcha ceremonies to Moroccan mint tea and British high tea. Sugar is now a massive industry, producing over 180 million tons each year. But its sweet success comes with a cost. Sugar consumption is linked to rising rates of obesity, diabetes, and other health concerns worldwide. Governments and health organizations now campaign to reduce sugar intake, while companies race to develop healthier alternatives. The story of sugar continues to evolve. Today, these products still drive fortunes, but instead of empires, it's global brands and consumer demand that shape their story. Our choices at the checkout now influence economies, the environment, and public health. Every cup of coffee, every pot of tea, and every spoonful of sugar connects us to a centuries-old story of trade, innovation, and change. The legacy of these simple products is still being written by all of us. Empires were built on coffee, tea, and sugar, products we barely think about today. They shaped global trade, sparked revolutions, and built financial institutions that still exist. So next time you sip your coffee or stir sugar into your tea, remember, you're holding the history of global finance in your hands.